Senator Joyal.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your testimonies. I listened carefully to you, Mr. Tousaw and Mr. Lucas, especially for my first question, and I was left puzzling because you argue in your presentation that many of your customers would, or the people with who you're in contact daily would find themselves in prisons if that bill would be implemented, passed and implemented. But when we heard the federal commissioner, the commissioner of the federal penitentiaries, he testified in front of us on November the 19th. And in his presentation, and after that question, in his presentation, he stated the following, and I quote, "At this time, we do not have any data to assess whether there will be a direct impact on CSC's population levels," end of quote. And we asked him a question. Personally, I asked him a question, and I said, it's strange because if this bill is to have an impact, it's to put people in prison. That's essentially what is the gist of the bill, is to impose mandatory minimum sentences, and there are sentences, of course, as you saw in the bill, that are higher than 2 years. So it should have an impact, and his answers was very elusive, and I will use a very diplomatic word here. In other words, he didn't want to commit himself that the bill would have a financial impact on the number of people in prison, and hence the cost that this bill would entail. On your own experience and on the view of his answers to us, that he cannot really measure a significant increase of populations or inmates population after that bill is implemented, what is your own answers to that conclusion of the commissioner? He's not, he's a responsible, very responsible person. He's the head of the federal penitentiaries in this country.
The point of the bill is to jail people. And the point of the bill is to jail people for periods of time in excess of the time in which you'd get provincial sentences. In other words, anything over 2 years, you get a federal sentence. So it boggles the mind to think that there won't be an impact on the costs associated with the correctional system. Certainly we see from the experience of the United States that in effect their regime of mandatory minimum sentences have essentially bankrupted their prison systems, whilst also leading to conditions of incarceration that are, in my submission, inhumane and violative of people's human rights. Ms. Philippe talked about 7 times the rate of HIV within prison, and in the general population 30 times the rate of Hep C. There's violence in prison. Prison are recruiting grounds for gangs. Prisons don't teach you how to reintegrate into society. They do exactly the opposite. And in my submission, we should be looking for ways to keep people out of prison, not to put them there. But to suggest that this is somehow not going to affect the budgets of the correctional services, perhaps that wasn't the witness's suggestion. It was that they don't have data. The point's to put people in prison. Of course that's going to cost money.
In fairness to him, I think it was that he did not have hard data and was unwilling to hazard an informed guess.
Much like I say the Minister of Justice didn't have any hard data.
I want to argue with you. I will quote his answers. I don't have it with me. But I will quote his answers. What he said that he had data was about Bill C-15. It was a clear answer from him that he had data, but he didn't want to release. But on this one, it was not at all the answers. And I remember very well the arguments I had with him. I said, if you state this, and after 2 years of review, we come with the figures, then your credibility will be at stake, and that's what I said to him. But I don't want to have an argument between the chair, and of course that's not the purpose, but it's essentially to try to understand the impact of this bill on the inmate population.
Well, I can tell you that when this bill was formerly called C-26, and I had a chance to testify in front of the House of Commons in regards to that bill, it's largely unchanged, as you all know. The the Justice Minister of British Columbia at the time estimated that this would lead to 700 more imprisonments per year, and he actually estimated and made public comments that it might mean the need to build extra prisons in order to, because our prisons are already overloaded. Additionally, he had concerns that this would actually displace more violent criminals. In other words, we'd be putting non-violent drug offenders in beds or in jail cells that might otherwise better serve more violent criminals. And so I have no doubt that this would have an impact, and that certainly was the testimony of our Justice Minister at the time and his public statements.